to see a bit of flooding and some travel disruption, especially in parts of the southwest. However, the rain will clear away towards the east as we go through the day, with something drier and brighter following in behind. Just a few showers to watch out for here and there. It is going to be windy though, and so that wind will take the edge off the temperatures, which are above average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come through the end of the week, likely to see another band of rain sweeping its way through on Thursday, and that could be quite heavy, some downpours possible, with showers likely elsewhere. And more showers to come as we go through Friday. It's likely to be a bit blustery at times too, but there should be some sunshine in between. Into Saturday, and it looks a little bit drier, but temperatures dropping closer to average for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Look, you're a respected royal biographer, and there are so many people who are on the sort of royal gravy train, if you will, people who are making a career out of gossip and speculation. But yours very much built on confidence and sources and facts. And you don't offer an opinion that often inside your book. But when you do, I suppose, therefore, it carries a bit more weight. So when you say that the Sussexes are easily offended and, you know, effectively pretty prickly, what do you mean, and what have you based that on?
Well, on numerous their riposte to any given situation in their books, in their TV interviews. And let's not forget, there have been a lot of TV interviews, 6-part Netflix drama, Spare. You see time and again that they feel they feel resentful. They feel that, you know, something hasn't gone their way, and that this is part of some sort of calculated campaign against them. And actually, I mean, when you've got a fast-moving story, I mean, for example, in my book, I go into those frantic hours after the death of the Queen, and everybody's trying to sort themselves out. And Harry writes in his book Spare how you know, no one will return his calls, and he can't get through to anyone, and it's sort of it's just all a bit me. And actually, the whole kind of royal machine, if you like, is a team effort. And I just think it's very sad because, you know, Harry and Meghan, they had such potential. And now when we do tend to hear from them, on a royal matter, it's just to say how miserable they were being royal. And that was, you know, they were royal for whatever it was, 600-700 days. They're post-royal now for over
Can you envisage a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life?
I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. It's 9 p.m, I'm Patrick Christys Tonight.
The only solution is jihad by the armies of the Muslim countries. Not by you and me, or we. What training do I have? There are people with arms.
I blow the lid off the shadowy Muslim vote organisation, plus...
It's urgent, it's really important, and it's for individuals.
Archbishop Justin Welby should quit, be sacked or placed under urgent investigation. And...
Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will kill himself if he's extradited. I speak to his lawyer. Also... The tour manager for legendary group The Happy Mondays is facing life in a Turkish prison for his alleged role in an £80 million cocaine smuggling ring. He pleads his innocence, live on air. And this country values trans sex workers more than our late Queen. Our panel tonight is GB News star Nana Akua, Tory Deputy Chairman James Daly and author Amy Nicole Turner. Oh, and find out what happened when I took to the streets earlier today. Get ready, Britain, here we go. It's time for Archbishop Justin Welby to face a reckoning. I explain why next.
Good evening. The top story from the GB newsroom tonight. The Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration was sacked today after he was found to have breached the terms of his appointment and lost the confidence of the Home Secretary James Cleverly. David Neil said he'd received Home Office data showing that UK Border Force officials had failed to check the occupants of hundreds of private jets arriving at London City Airport. But the Home Office disputed his claims, with the Minister for Legal Immigration, Tom Pursglove, insisting checks are performed on all scheduled passengers. He said it was deeply disturbing that the independent chief inspector leaked what he described as false information to a newspaper after reports were published in the Daily Mail. The Home Office says it's now investigating the so-called breach. A body was discovered yesterday in the River Thames, and detectives strongly believe it is that of chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi. Earlier, police had said they believed Azidi had gone into the river at Chelsea Bridge based on CCTV evidence. The body was recovered by the Metropolitan Police's Marine Unit at around 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon after a report from the crew of a passing boat. His former partner, meanwhile, who was attacked alongside her 2 young daughters, remains in hospital and is no longer under sedation. The sentence of a man who killed 3 people in Nottingham may have been unduly lenient, and now it's going to be reviewed by judges. Valdo Kalakani killed students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar and school caretaker Ian Coates in June last year. Their families welcomed today's announcement by the Attorney-General, saying they're hopeful for an outcome that will provide some of the appropriate justice they've been calling for. Prince William has said today that the fighting in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas must end as soon as possible, adding there's a desperate need for increased humanitarian support for Gaza. The Prince of Wales said he's deeply concerned about the terrible human cost of the conflict, with too many lives lost. It follows Lord Cameron's warning to Israel that the fighting needs to stop. Labour's also called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in a major policy shift in the party's stance on the war. The Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy saying earlier the world wants the fighting to stop. And lastly, lawyers for Julian Assange claim they have evidence that the United States developed a plan to either try to kill him or forcibly bring him back to America. Protesters were gathering today outside the Royal Courts of Justice in support of the WikiLeaks founder, who's making his final appeal against extradition to the United States. It's part of his long-running ordeal, which could be his final chance to avoid spending the rest of his life in a United States prison. For the very latest news stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It is time for the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, to stand down or be forced to undergo an urgent investigation into the complete and utter shower he is presiding over. If he really is a Christian, it would be the right, moral and virtuous thing to do, for the reasons I'm about to outline. Today it has emerged that despite Welby pushing a green agenda, the Church of England has been investing in water companies responsible for pumping sewage into our rivers, and they are refusing to stop investing in them. The Church said that it held £325,000 in water company shares, which could pay out a dividend, and about £30 million in bonds across the sector. This, by the way, is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how dodgy the Church of England and Justin Welby smells at the moment. The How We Invest section on their website states the Church Commissioners manage a £10.3 billion investment fund in an ethical and responsible way. Well, until very recently, the Church was investing with arms dealers and oil and gas giants. They have the audacity to use a picture of the idyllic countryside on their website, whilst they coin it in from these supposedly destructive and harmful industries, including pumping human faeces into the waterways. It might also interest you to know that whilst the Church of England sits on that £10 billion fund, members of the clergy were forced to demand a pay rise in June to cope with the cost of living crisis. Their wages, by the way, largely come from public donations. Oh, and get this. At the Trades Union Congress a few years ago, Justin Welby said 0-hour contracts and companies like Amazon paying little to no tax are the reincarnation of an ancient evil. Well, it turned out 2 Church of England cathedrals were advertising 0 hours contracts, and Amazon was reportedly one of the Church's biggest investments worldwide. Today, the Metropolitan Police announced that they believe that they have found the body of Abdul Azidi, the twice-failed asylum seeker and notorious sex criminal who doused a woman and children with alkaline before jumping into the Thames. He pretended to be Christian to game the asylum system, although not specifically through the C of E. The Church of England has been accused of running a conveyor belt for illegal immigrants to fake asylum claims. These include allegations of mass asylum seeker baptisms and members of the clergy vouching for illegal immigrants, one of whom blew himself up outside a maternity hospital in Liverpool. The Church of England, under Justin Welby, stands accused of coaching clergy to help fake asylum seekers concoct claims that allow them to stay in Britain. These asylum seekers are almost always from Muslim countries, and therefore, by extension, the Church of England finds itself in the bizarre position of being accused of accelerating the Islamification of Britain and being fundamentally dishonest at the same time, claims the Church denies. All of this has taken place under the watchful eye of Archbishop Welby, but perhaps his greatest failure is the dwindling attendance figures at church. As the population of Britain grows by millions of people, the number of people attending church is nosediving. In fact, weekly attendance figures were down by 200,000 people in 2022 to just 654,000. Perhaps Mr Welby will take comfort in the knowledge that attendances at mosques around the country have risen instead. If Archbishop Justin Welby was in charge of a business, he would have been sacked and quite possibly put under investigation. I wonder if it is time that that happened. We approached the Church of England for comment, and they failed to get back to us. Of course, not everyone in the Church of England prescribes to Welby's woke view of the world. Former chaplain of Derbyshire's Trent College, Dr Bernard Randall, appeared at the Employment Appeal Tribunal earlier today after he was sacked for delivering a sermon that questioned gender ideology. Unsurprisingly, he was abandoned by the Church of England. He's even found himself reported to the terrorist watchdog Prevent. I'm very pleased to say that Dr Randall joins me now. Thank you very much. Could you just explain exactly what happened to you, please?
Well, to cut a very long story short, I was the chaplain in a school, and a pupil asked me to preach on how come they were told they had to accept the LGBT stuff in a Christian school. I thought that was a fair question. So I said, ultimately, no, you don't have to accept anybody else's ideas. You make up your own minds. And so on topics like the marriage being between a man and a woman, biological sex being real, gender identity not making perfect sense, therefore can't be entirely true. I said, you know, you may adopt the Church's position on that and respect the people you disagree with, but you make up your own mind, for which, as you say, I was reported to Prevent, the anti-terror watchdog, secular safeguarding authorities, the Teaching Regulation Agency, Disclosure and Barring Service, all of whom eventually cleared me, but I lost my job at the school, and that's why there's legal action ongoing. We had a hearing today, as you say. Unfortunately, they decided they need to put the case off because there's another legal case touching on similar stuff going to the Court of Appeal in October. So they said, we have to wait for that one. So I need to wait another year before I can even get a date for the hearing to hear my appeal. So by the time it has been heard, there's every possibility that we could be 6 or 7 years after the sermon for me to get justice, which is a difficult time to go through.
It's an incredibly powerful sermon, to be fair. What do you make of Justin Welby in his current role? I've obviously rattled off quite a few things there. I mean, you've had personal experience of feeling quite abandoned. What's your view on his position?
Well, he's doing a very difficult job, in fairness to him. My personal view is perhaps he's not doing the best job of it. I'll be diplomatic about it, shall we say. As regards my own situation, all the secular safeguarding authorities have cleared me entirely, but the Church of England is ongoing with a safeguarding problem. Because I taught Church of England teaching in a Church of England school, they treat me as a safeguarding risk. Justin Welby has done nothing to help me. So if he's watching, and maybe he is, it's not too late to step in and help my situation. But fundamentally, he gave a speech in between me giving my sermon and the story going public a few years ago. He gave a speech talking about religious freedom and how important it is and vital in a modern society. And yet when it came to my story being told, because in a sense I'm on the wrong side of things as far as he's concerned, I guess, not a word of support, not a whisper from anyone in the Church of England's hierarchy for someone simply saying, you may accept the Church of England's own teaching. And I can't quite see how he can square that in his own head, but he would have to answer to that himself, I guess.
I mean, the irony is that, though this is obviously through no fault of your own, the Church of England has recently baptised people who have gone on to not just be referred to prevent, but actually commit acts of terrorism. Meanwhile, you were referred to prevent for essentially teaching, Christian teaching. Look, thank you very, very much. I know that was short and sweet, but I do hope to get you back on, and I hope that you feel heard for what you've said there. That is, of course, Dr. Bernard Randall. Now, a Trent College spokesperson has previously said Trent College is an inclusive community where we are proud of our commitment to support the well-being of everyone. We want every single pupil to be safe and feel understood here. Well, there we go. I'm going to get the thoughts now of my panel. We have got GB News presenter Nana Akua, Conservative Deputy Chairman James Daly MP, and also author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Nana, does Archbishop Justin Welby need to be sacked, step down, face an investigation, all of the above?
All of the above, and I'm surprised it's taken them so long to perhaps even look at him in this way, because he was the one who said that Rwanda was against the will of God. And what is he talking about? The church, in my view, I went to a convent school run by nuns. I was really deeply religious, studied philosophy and theology, and I came out of it thinking, what a con. That's what I thought. Gold leaf in the churches. It's so opulent, and it really doesn't surprise me that he has clearly vested interests in this pension scenario, because obviously a lot of the money from these water companies, they've invested their money in water companies, their pension is in there. And I just find it astonishing that they complained about oil and gas investments, and the church pulled their money from those investments. But for the water companies who are spewing a load of poo into the water, nothing. Yeah.
No, nothing at all. James, I mean, you're in a position to maybe raise it with the Prime Minister. Do you think he should be calling on Justin Welby to step down?
Well, what I think was very telling from what Dr. Randall said is make up your mind, the most dangerous words in modern Britain. Give the facts to people and let them make up their mind. That's not what the modern leftist ideology is about. If you don't do as we say, we are going to intimidate you. We're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure you pay for not buying into our view on life. I do fear on occasion that Justin Welby is essentially trying to turn the Church of England into a religious version of Channel 4 News. And it really is extremely unfortunate. We need to... One of the things, as Nana has said, in terms of, say, the Rwanda debate, the words over the years have been used, it's immoral, it's I think it's somebody wants
ungodly
and evil. I mean, I dread to think, if you are actually a member of the Church of England and you think that this country should have robust border controls, my God, you're actually... The guy who's in charge is calling you immoral.
Yeah, if he ran a business as well as he's running the Church of England, he would be out of a job. Dwindling parish numbers, I mean, as well as just the kind of massive ham's fist that he's made of absolutely every single investment, it seems, and the hypocrisy, Amy, and the reputational damage.
I don't know, I think it's that he is running a shop that people aren't interested in the products anymore, so it's kind of like a shop selling things that people don't necessarily need anymore.
Defining what the product is, though, isn't he?
Well, yeah, but the whole we're increasingly secular, aren't we? So I just think it's not going to be easy for anyone to convince people to join the church at this time in our history.
The Islamic community.
Well, that's a different subject.
Migrants coming in.
Obviously, we're all going to be intellectually curious about different religions and stuff, but I think putting everything at the door of Justin Welby and saying he's awful across the board, it just seems like he just says things that you guys don't agree with, and that's what
I'll tell you what, one of the other things for me, and it's a massive bugbear, is I have lost track now of the amount of times on a variety of different topics that we've gone to the Church of England for comment, OK? And certain things that I think most people would regard as needing urgent investigation, including the potential industrial scale.
They have actually...
And they refuse and refuse and refuse and refuse, or say send just the same comment, and no other organisation appears to get away with it.
Well, he's a hypocrite, isn't he? And, I mean, let's not forget the sexual abuse within the church. Obviously, Justin was not part of that. But the bottom line is that was within the Church of England, all the paedophilia and all the awful things that are happening. And amazingly, I can say that because we know about it. I agree with Amy. He's selling something that nobody wants, but he's an absolute out-and-out hypocrite.
But just on this water thing...
If you're going to be somebody who's preaching religion, then practice what you preach.
He has come back, the church has come back and said they're going to look at the investment and maybe disinvest like they did with the fossil fuel industry. So they have responded to it. And I think it's an error of judgment, but they've recognised that.
No, they didn't say that.
It's nuts.
They have. They've come back and said that.
I tell you, we're now actually in a world where legal investments, people are saying we can't invest them because of our self-imposed morality. Well, lots of people who contribute financially to the Church of England may well not share that morality, so there's a few people who want to impose it on the rest of us.
Look, it's a great start to the show. Thank you very much. Can I just thank again Dr. Bernard Randall there for coming into the studio, and just want to emphasise, do hope to get a bit longer with you next time. But... talking of time running out, time is running out, and your chance to win £18,000 cash for the latest Great British giveaway. As lines close this Friday, make sure you get your entry in. Here's how you could win.
It's the final week to see how you could be the winner of the Great British Giveaway. There's an incredible £18,000 in cash to be won, totally tax-free cash that you can do whatever you like with. That works out to be an extra £1,500 to play with each month for a whole year. You could put it towards monthly treats, save it for a rainy day, or just use it to take the pressure off in 2024. But hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 922. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Good luck. I've got one heck of a show coming your way this evening, because very shortly I speak to the former tour manager of rock band The Happy Mondays, who was nicked by Turkish authorities in an alleged £80 million drugs bust. He says he's innocent, but up next, Sadiq Khan has launched another farcical competition for what sculpture should appear on Trafalgar Square's 4th plinth, right? Nominees include a sweet potato, trans sex workers, and a Bollywood ice cream van. But should the late Queen not be taking pride of place instead? Repaid Omanku goes head-to-head with Jenny Barnett, and a little bit later on in the show as well, I'll be revealing some very interesting things about the muslimvote.co.uk. This is Patrick Christys tonight, and we are only on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show. Sunday mornings from 9:30.
We had Grant Shapps on last week. He was talking about how defence spending is now creeping up to 2.25% of GDP. Ben Wallace's predecessor suggested it should be 3%. We hear that we've got the smallest army, I think, since the Napoleonic Wars. Numbers are down. There's a question as to whether we can staff frigates in the Red Sea. Why haven't we sent aircraft carriers? What's your impression of the situation?
Well, I don't think it matters how much you spend, it's how effectively you spend it. And we spend it very ineffectively. We have lots of scandals about defence spending. And I think partly because of the monopoly position of some of our defence suppliers, we don't get good value and we don't get reliability. This latest story in the Telegraph is that HMS Diamond, which is our ship, which is out there defending the Red Sea, doesn't have the capability of firing a missile from the ship to the land, so it can't participate in the attacks on the Houthis. So in order that we can participate in the attacks, we're flying RAF aircraft from Cyprus, which is a very long way away. When I was Defence Secretary, I ordered cruise missiles for our nuclear-powered, but not nuclear-armed submarines. And I think we have 6 or possibly 7 of those. But last autumn, it was reported that 5 of those were out of commission, were not available. We have about 21 aggressive surface ships. So we've got 2 aircraft carriers, then we've got frigates, and we've got destroyers. But at any one time, you can count on about half of those not being available because they're under refit or whatever. So we have a minimal surface fleet now. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we're able to deploy a submarine to the area that can fire cruise missiles. Our 2 aircraft carriers, built at enormous expense, are sitting in Portsmouth.
Which seems to most people ludicrous,
well,
at least with what's going on.
It doesn't seem ludicrous to me.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Coming up, the former tour manager for the Happy Mondays, Anthony Murray, and why he fears dying in a Turkish prison. But first, it's time for tonight's head-to-head. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has infuriated royalists and anyone with a bit of common sense after shunning a statue of our late Queen in favour of bizarre submissions that have been branded anti-British propaganda. The 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square was rumoured to be reserved for Queen Elizabeth II, but it will instead be adorned with 2 statues from a shortlist that includes a Bollywood-themed ice cream van honouring the artist's father's emigration to Britain from India, and an international sweet potato designed to reflect the diverse conversations that happen in the square. This year's statue has already been chosen and will be hundreds of faces of trans sex workers. That installation cost the taxpayer £140,000, plus a further £30,000 for the artist's fee. However, Tory mayoral candidate Susan Hall has promised to force what she calls woke art to be moved to make sure that our late Queen can have a statue. That, of course, is if she's elected in May. So tonight I'm asking, which option would you prefer to have as the statue on Trafalgar Square's 4th plinth? Would you go for Queen Elizabeth? Would you go for the faces of trans sex workers, a Bollywood-themed ice cream van, or a well-travelled sweet potato? Let me know your thoughts by emailing me gbviews@gbnews.com. You can tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. The results to follow very shortly, but going head-to-head on this now are historian Rafe Hadel-Mancu and author and broadcaster Jenny Barnett. Rafe, is this not absolute sacrilege?
It is, absolutely. You know, when they first announced the 4th plinth back in 1999, I was actually quite in favour of it because I knew that it would eventually be dedicated to Her Majesty. And I thought it would be a great and harmless, fun way to bring art to the public. But instead of that, it's been captured by Khan and also by Mayor Ken Livingstone and used as a platform for divisive identity politics. Quite frankly, I think Her Majesty deserves to be on there. I'd like to see 2 statues of Her Majesty, actually. Queen Victoria has 10 statues in London. I think Her Majesty deserves her rightful place in Trafalgar Square. But, you know, she was every bit as great as Queen Victoria or Albert. They've got a Victoria Memorial and an Albert Memorial. I think we should also have a huge stonking Queen Elizabeth Memorial, maybe in Hyde Park or on the Mall, you know, on the opposite end of the Victoria Memorial. But certainly we've known for a long time that it's devoted and deserved that Her Majesty take her rightful place as one of our greatest monarchs.
Jenny, why do we value trans sex workers over our arguably greatest ever monarch?
We value everybody, Patrick. We value whatever they are, LGBT, black, white, brown, Jewish, Christian. And I think that what people have to look at, if the Queen was still alive, she would be supportive of the arts. Let us look at what that plinth has done. Over the years, we have looked at Alison Lapper with no arms and no legs. It taught us compassion. Anthony Gormley had over 2,500 people standing on there, and it suddenly became a work of art that everybody knew about. It even got onto the Archers. It introduced the first British black artist. We had a great big blue cockerel, which was a symbol of regeneration, awakening, and strength, and I could go on. But I think that not everybody is royalist. There are 9 statues to the Queen, and I don't think we need it in Trafalgar Square. It is a place where people are subversive. It's always been a place where people talk and discuss, and we are living in a multicultural society, whether people like it or not.
I get that, but...
The plinth should remain subversive.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but Rafe, you know, Trafalgar Square is one of the greatest tourist attractions in this country. And I am convinced that people from Japan, people from America, people from all over the world come to see a statue of our Queen and not a well-travelled sweet potato.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Sweet potato.
Jenny.
Sorry.
Go on,
that potato to me looks rather like an enlarged soup dropping more than a potato, I have to say. But yes, I mean, look, we have to realise what's going on here. There's a clear agenda at play by Sadiq Khan and by the 4th Plinth Commissioning Group, the body that's actually tasked with selecting these artworks. And it's a body that is stacked with hugely divisive figures, some of whom have shown utter disdain for the British and the London indigenous population. People like Jon Snow, the Channel 4 broadcaster, who famously said that a Brexit rally in Whitehall was the largest gathering of white people he had ever seen. This from a man who goes to Glastonbury every year, which is 10 times larger and more white. What we're seeing is no attempt ever made to celebrate our glorious British history, London's great past. You know, the 6 finalists who have been shortlisted, 5 of them are ethnic minorities. There's only one person
are you. And so are you.
Exactly.
How rude you are.
Britain is 80%
white,
74% white British. There's a clear agenda here at stake. We have to be aware about this. This is about Sadiq Khan enforcing a new cultural orthodoxy on London, a new ideology, new heroes, and new myths.
All right. Jenny, realistically, Jenny, I'm just going to ask, look, it's one thing representing... You've rattled off some great examples before, absolutely, you know, and all power to them. But how niche are we going to get here, Jenny? We're talking about a Bollywood-themed ice cream van, for goodness sake. I mean, at what point do you just go, look, that is absolutely, completely and utterly pointless, and it represents nobody else than the grandfather of the person who used to drive it?
No, it isn't. Come on, Patrick, open your blooming eyes.
I'm looking at it. I don't understand what it...
It's about the motherland. It is about immigration, and art will always be progressive. You like to call it woke, but it isn't. Art will always upend the apple cart to make you look at things differently. I have no beef with the royal family. I think they're lovely. I like them. But we've got enough of Buckingham Palace and castles and all the rest of it. We have one plinth in the corner of Trafalgar Square where people can express themselves. And Trafalgar Square has always been a place of celebration and protest. And you yourself, young man, should understand that we all have voices. It's made me so cross what you're saying, that you are dissing your own diaspora.
I'm delighted by this.
And let me just say about this sweet potato, that it's reflecting the international conversations that happen in the square. It came from a vegetable that's come from Peru. We should be honouring that. Since the Tory party have taken away all kind of discussion in schools and art and music and expression. What do you want? You want to go back to Victoriana. The only queen that we should have in Trafalgar Square should be a bronze picture of Paul O'Grady with a dog.
This is unbelievable. I like Paul O'Grady.
really appeal to more people than a well-travelled sweet potato, for goodness sake.
Have you seen what it looks like? It's beautiful.
OK. Rafe, I'm just going to ask you, in terms of cost-effectiveness as well, so we now have some of this art that has apparently cost us the best part of about £300,000 or whatever it is. So presumably, if the Queen's one was there, it would be the statue to end all statues. It would be the best ever statue of Queen Elizabeth II. We may well end up paying goodness knows what for that, but it would be a one-time cost. We have to pay about 250 grand or whatever it is every single time some art lunatic decides they want to shove something on a plinth.
That's right. The London taxpayer is actually paying to have these to have their eyes assaulted every time they get out of Charing Cross Station. And you referenced the ice cream van that celebrates the Indian community in Liverpool. I mean, what on earth does that have to do with London? But many statues in the Victorian era were actually funded by public subscription. So it actually needn't really cost anyone anything, because there's enough love in this nation for
one at a time. Let Ray finish, then we'll go to you, Jenny. Go on, Rafe. Wrap it up, Rafe. Go on.
But the point is, Sadiq Khan and his apparatchiks and his Politburo have the audacity to accuse the right of stoking the culture wars, but he's using every tool at his disposal, from the overground lines that he's renamed to the plinth, to put this new cultural orthodoxy on the capital. He's the mayor who wants to take us from net zero to year zero and erase our history.
Jenny, final word on this. Look, there is no clamour whatsoever to have a sweet potato, a Bollywood-themed ice cream van or trans sex workers on a plinth in Trafalgar Square. There is clamour to have the Queen.
How important is art and the expression of art to you?
Not that important.
Exactly.
That's not art.
That's your problem. You are both Philistines.
Oh, dear.
I tell you what's more important, Jenny, is our late Queen. And also, I'm sorry, I think as Ray said that, I'm just not convinced that's art. I'm sorry, Jenny, I just don't think
How do you define art? What is art?
Well, it's not on the fourth plinth right now.
All right. Look, we're going to have to wrap it up there. I've enjoyed this. I have thoroughly enjoyed this tonight. So thank you very, very much. All right, look, which option would you prefer? Queen Elizabeth II, the faces of trans sex workers, a Bollywood-themed ice cream van, or a well-travelled sweet potato? Ian, on X, says, I voted for the potato. Maybe when the public will see what's going on with Sadiq Khan. Tomo, on X, says, those who didn't vote for Bollywood ice cream vans are clearly racist, misogynistic Karens and should be sacked from whatever job they've got. Nisi, on X, says, remove the plinth so we can be spared their inability to produce anything remotely artistic. Look, your verdict is now in. 87% of you went for our late Queen, 5% of you went for the faces of trans sex workers, 3% of you opted for a Bollywood-themed ice cream van, and 5% of you went for a well-travelled sweet potato. Well done, everybody. Coming up, the lawyer for Julian Assange... This is a shift. You only get this on this show, isn't it? The lawyer for Julian Assange joins me in the studio as the WikiLeaks founder makes his final bid for freedom at the High Court. Very much a shift in tone, incredibly important story. But next... In a previous life, he was the tour manager for the Happy Mondays. Now, he could die in a Turkish jail after getting nicked in an alleged £80 million drugs bust. Well, it's a crime that Anthony Murray says he has nothing to do with. He's live and pleading his innocence. Next, this is Patrick Christys Tonight, and we're very much only on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives, we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, Julian Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson, joins me as he launches his last-ditch appeal against extradition to the United States. I will also be revealing quite a lot about the muslimvote.co.uk. But first, Anthony Murray was once a key figure in the Manchester scene, working as a tour manager for the band The Happy Mondays and striking up a very close friendship with frontman Shaun Ryder. But he is now facing the prospect of dying in a Turkish prison after being arrested back in 2020 for his alleged role in an £80 million cocaine bust on a ship travelling from Colombia into Turkey. Anthony is currently released on bail after being held in custody by the Turks for over a year, but could be looking at a 55-year stretch in their notoriously squalid prisons if found guilty. I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by Anthony Murray himself. Anthony, look, thank you very, very much. So you are pleading innocent to all of this, I take it?
Yes, I am innocent, yes, Patrick, yeah.
And so what happened? Were you caught involved with £80 million worth of cocaine on some ship somewhere?
No, after the pandemic, I went to Turkey with my daughter and grandson to get some dental work for my daughter. And I was there. I had to stay because I had some implants and some damage done, some infection. I couldn't leave. And the police, I met someone through a friend of mine in Manchester who said, when you go to Istanbul, meet my friend, he'll take you around. So we met up with my daughter and his daughters. The police was following him for maybe 4 or 5 weeks, following me. The day I'm supposed to fly back to Manchester, the police arrested me in the hotel, 12:05 at night on the Thursday night, Friday morning, and it took me to the police station, 3 days in there, then to the prison, and I'm still here now. I'm in Tel Aviv now.
So what, just fill me in on what are they trying to say that your involvement in this is then? How have they managed to try to stick this on you?
Because they see me in a meeting with these guys, but it was with my daughter, and they said they had my name was Antonio, which was a Colombian name. They were looking for someone called Antonio from Colombia. I fit that description. They said, this is me. They thought I was Colombian. Even though they got the passport, they knew I was English after 3 days. And it's gone on since then. That's all it is. I only knew one of the guys. There's 16 of us on trial. It's been going on since then. And I'm back in court again on Thursday.
I hope you don't mind me asking. I mean, have you had any previous convictions
Yeah, a few, yes. Yeah, but not for cocaine and not for 250 kilo. Nothing to do with Colombia.
OK, and what kind of impact is this having on your life now then? So you are currently where? Because you're not in Turkey at the moment, are you?
I'm in Tel Aviv now with my girlfriend. I've been here since September. I went back to court in October, but they arrested me at the airport in Antalya. Detained me for 8 hours and sent me back, said I'm not allowed back in the country because I overstayed my visa. I explained I was in the prison. I couldn't overstay. Then you took my passport off me for a year. So it wasn't an overstay. It was just in prison, and they took the passport. So they said, well, we're sending you back. You have to fill the paperwork in. And that was it. And I'm back here now. I'm flying back in on Thursday. Hopefully we can get it resolved. I just don't know till I get there on Thursday now.
OK, and can I ask as well, look, I imagine with respect, I don't know how big the Happy Mondays were in the Turkish community, to be fair, Anthony, but I don't imagine the fact that you were maybe
they are now, but it wasn't then.
They are now, yeah. I don't imagine the fact that you were the ex-tour manager might have stood you in too much good stead when it comes to pleading innocent about the old drug stuff. But how have Sean Ryder and Bez been about this whole thing?
Oh, they've been great. Sean got the legal team for me. I've got the best legal team in Istanbul. Sean, Bez are always on the phone to me every week, every day. Sean's just been on a minute ago. They really support me more than anything. They've helped me out with everything that I possibly needed. Clothes, everything was sent to the prison for me. Letters. Wasn't allowed visits because it was in COVID, but Sean was willing to come. He speaks to me lawyer all the time and really, really looks after everything that I needed.
OK, you did have a year in a Turkish prison, did you? And I don't imagine you fancy 55 more. My only insight into them is Midnight Express. Is there anything like that?
It's exactly the same as that, worse. It's just chaotic every night in there, every day.
OK, all right. Well, I mean, you've made your case pretty clear. You're obviously coming on to say that you're completely innocent, and it's a case of...
Yeah, completely innocent, yeah.
Mistaken identity for a Colombian drug lord who happens to have a similar name, Antonio. And
yes.
All right. Well, I mean, we'll chat to you again very soon, hopefully, and good luck.
Yeah,
just what can we? So, just to clarify, so you're gonna? There's a hearing on Thursday, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I've been on trial for 3 years, so it's every 6 weeks. So hopefully it's a conclusion now. I won't know when I get to court. I just wait, see what they say. They give me bail, or they send me back to the prison. I don't know.
Can they extradite you from Tel Aviv?
Pardon? No.
They can't extradite you from Tel Aviv?
No, but I want to clear my name. Everyone says this, why are you going back? Right. I want to go back. I need to be clear. I don't want to be chased all around the world by Turks.
Well, fair enough.
Or by anyone. Anyone.
No, but especially not. Anyway, Anthony, all right, look after yourself, take care, and I'll chat to you again soon. That was the former Happy Mondays tour manager, Anthony Murray, in one of the more bizarre segments I've ever done on Patrick Christys tonight. Look, coming up, you won't believe who is allegedly behind themuslimvote.co.uk. This is a new campaign. I blow the lid off the kind of extremists that Keir Starmer is potentially caving into. But next, is Julian Assange a criminal or a freedom fighter? He's got one more chance to get out of jail, and his supporters were out in numbers outside the High Court today. I will be joined in the studio by Julian Assange's lawyer next for an unmissable interview. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up, I lift the lid on the shady underbelly of the campaign pressuring Keir Starmer into calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. But first, Julian Assange's last-ditch appeal against his extradition from the UK to the US began today with crowds of his supporters gathering outside the High Court in protest. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted on espionage charges after thousands of classified military and diplomatic documents were published between 2010 and 2011. In one of the biggest data leaks in American history. Assange has been in Belmarsh jail in London since 2019 after he was expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy, where he lived for 7 years to avoid extradition to Sweden on rape charges. In June 2022, the then Home Secretary Priti Patel approved Assange's extradition to the United States. A little earlier today, I spoke to Julian Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson. The WikiLeaks founder was too ill to attend court today, so I started by asking her about his health.
Well, obviously the fact that he couldn't even participate remotely to follow the proceedings today shows just the toll that this long drawn-out proceedings and being in Belmarsh, a high-security prison, has had on him, and the prospect and the being at the sharp end of this case and what it would mean for him to be extradited to the United States. The toll that it's having on him is significant.
What was said in court today, then?
So today the court heard our side of the arguments, our arguments on why he should be given permission to appeal. They range from arguments about free speech and the fact that this is the first time in history that a publisher is being prosecuted in the United States for what is journalistic activity. We heard about the fact that Julian shouldn't be extradited because he's being punished and prosecuted for revealing evidence of US criminality, US state criminality. We heard evidence about the fact that the US could potentially extend the death penalty to him if he was to be extradited to the United States, and there's been no assurances that he would not be subjected to that. We also heard evidence about the imbalance between the UK-US treaty and the fact that it's prohibited to be extradited for a political offence, and they're seeking to prosecute him for a political offence. And we say that's not just unlawful, but also an abusive process.
OK, I mean, he is allegedly responsible for the largest leaking of military intelligence, I think, ever. And the stats that I have here, correct me if I'm wrong, is that around 90,000 classified US military documents in relation to the Afghanistan war and about 400,000 confidential US files in relation to Iraq. I mean, there has to be some consequences for that, doesn't there?
Well, this is protected activity, and this was part of our argument today. There's no evidence that anyone was harmed as a result of these publications. As you quite rightly point out, it's one of the largest leaks of US information in history. It's one of the biggest journalistic scoops in history. It's won journalism awards the world over. Julian himself and WikiLeaks. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The consequences of these publications has been huge in terms of evidence being used in the International Criminal Court, in the European Court of Human Rights, holding governments to account for their crimes. So this was a significant release, but this is protected journalistic activity. No other journalist has been prosecuted in this way before. None of the media partners of WikiLeaks who also published this information are being prosecuted. And this case is a dangerous one for journalists. And as we say, it's the first time in history, and it's crossing a legal threshold that no administration has ever crossed before.
You claim to have evidence that there was a kidnap and assassination attempt, or plot, I should say, in relation to Julian. Could you just expand on that a little bit, please?
So this was the result of Yahoo News investigative reporting. The story is that the CIA, as directed by President Trump and under Director of CIA Mike Pompeo, had prepared plans to kidnap and kill Julian Assange, to kidnap him.
Is this whilst he was in Britain?
On British territory. So while he was inside the Ecuadorian embassy, there was a plan put together to kidnap and kill him. There was evidence that we had before the court of a whistleblower, a confidential witness, who said that there was a plan to poison him while he was inside the embassy. And this is the result of journalistic investigations backed up by 35 different internal government sources. And in fact, when the investigation went live, Mike Pompeo said that people ought to be prosecuted for having revealed the information, showing that it was classified information. So it should be concerned to anyone that the CIA would plot to do that in this country. And we say that it shows the very political nature of the case and the way in which the CIA is going for him, and the concern that we have of the treatment that he will suffer, Julian Assange, if he is extradited to the United States in these circumstances.
Is it true as well that one of the things that you are trying to argue is that he may well end up taking his own life if he's extradited as a result of his mental health?
It is, in fact, the accepted medical evidence. So there was expert evidence before the court in the extradition challenge, which showed that because of his particular mental health picture, the depressive illness he suffers because of the many, many years of persecution he's faced, his autistic diagnosis and the oppressive prison conditions he would face if extradited to the United States, he would be placed under special administrative measures, which has been described as the darkest black hole of the US prison system. The combination of these factors would cause him to commit suicide. So when you hear his wife, Stella Assange, talk about this is a matter of life or death for Julian, that is the accepted medical evidence in the courts of this country. And the only reason the Home Secretary is extraditing him because the US gave a conditional assurance saying, don't worry, we won't put him in those prison conditions. And as Amnesty International says, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Well, why not? Why is that assurance not worth the paper it's written on?
There are numerous cases where we've seen where US has offered diplomatic assurances about the protection of prisoners which have not been respected. And in this case, it's not even a full assurance, it's conditional. And what does that mean? If Julian Assange, once extradited to the United States, does anything that the intelligence services decide justifies placing him under SAMS, we can't challenge that legally. So you're allowing the intelligence services which plotted to kill him the ability to place him in prison conditions that the medical evidence shows would cause his death. You can see why, as his lawyers, we're concerned about that prospect.
I can absolutely see that. I can also see, though, that as far as the American government is concerned, they are or were acting in a theatre of war, and somebody has sought to undermine that. I mean, essentially, they would view him as an enemy of the United States of America and would look to treat him as such.
He's not an enemy of the United States. He's a journalist and a publisher who received information from a source. It may look, the source who provided the information to WikiLeaks, the alleged source, has already faced prosecution in the United States and was, in fact, had their sentence commuted and has been out of prison for many, many years.
And that person is
Chelsea Manning, who spent 7 years in prison as a result of the conviction that she faced because of providing this information to WikiLeaks. But Julian is a journalist and a publisher. WikiLeaks is a publishing organisation. So it's like saying that if you were to publish that information, you are the enemy of the United States. No, you're doing your job as a journalist.
OK. And what kind of message do you think this sends out, really, to the world? We look at a lot of the criticism that we've seen recently of Vladimir Putin, for example, over the Navalny's death. People have drawn comparisons, rightly or wrongly, people have drawn comparisons between the allegations as to what's happened to Navalny over there and potentially the way that the United States government will seek to treat Julian Assange.
I think there are many comparisons. The problem with Julian Assange's case is that what the US government is doing is setting a precedent. And what does that say to the rest of the world? We are going to criminally prosecute and extradite journalists who publish the truth about us for espionage. Any journalist anywhere in the world could face prosecution in the United States. What message does that send to Russia? Now we have Evan Gershkovich, for example, the Wall Street Journal journalist who's in Russia, facing espionage charges, and you've got the US Secretary of State saying he should be released. And what does Putin say? don't talk to me about this while you're doing the same to Julian Assange.
One final one with you. With respect, you know, Great Britain does have an allegiance with the United States of America. It does not have an allegiance with Julian Assange. Why should we prioritise Julian over our long-standing special relationship with America?
It's not a question of prioritising Julian Assange over the special relationship. It's about protecting free speech principles. This is not just about Julian Assange. It's the precedent it's setting for all journalists and editors in this country.
Well, that was Julian Assange's lawyer, Jennifer Robinson. We will, of course, be watching that hearing very, very closely. Now, coming up, has Keir Starmer caved to extremists by backing an immediate ceasefire in Gaza? Konstantin Kissing gives his expert analysis very, very soon. But first, this is an incredibly important topic that I think will define the future of Britain's politics, quite frankly, possibly the future of Britain, actually. And I know that our viewers and listeners care deeply about it. I will be exposing the alleged radical extremist links of one of the men seemingly behind the movement, the muslimvote.co.uk. The muslimvote.co.uk sprung up in the wake of the October 7th attacks. They claim to be incredibly well funded, and they claim to be trying to get as many MPs as possible elected at the next election on quotes unquote Muslim issues. Well, I was going to say you won't believe who one of the blokes behind it is, but unfortunately, you might. Reveal all just after 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We are only on GB News, and you do not want to miss me blow the lid off the Muslim vote. Next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm Alex Berkell and here's your latest GB News weather forecast. It is going to be widely very wet for most of us tomorrow morning. However, before then, we still have some rain around this evening and overnight, particularly across parts of the south as a front has made its way southwards as we've gone through today and is going to linger across southern parts through the night, bringing cloudy, wet weather here. Clearer skies further north at least to start the night before some cloudy, wet and windy conditions feed up from the southwest. Like I said, some clear skies to start the night in the north, and so we could see a touch of frost for a time before the unsettled weather pushes its way in, lifting our temperatures. So most places will start tomorrow mild but wet. Watch out for some heavy rain, could cause some spray on the roads, and we're likely to see a bit of flooding and some travel disruption, especially in parts of the southwest. However, the rain will clear away towards the east as we go through the day, with something drier and brighter following in behind. Just a few showers to watch out for here and there. It is going to be windy though, and so that wind will take the edge off the temperatures, which are above average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come through the end of the week, likely to see another band of rain sweeping its way through on Thursday, and that could be quite heavy, some downpours possible, with showers likely elsewhere, and more showers to come as we go through Friday. It's likely to be a bit blustery at times too, but there should be some sunshine in between. Into Saturday, and it looks a little bit drier, but temperatures dropping closer to average for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Lots of people very concerned about what's happening in the Middle East. Iran obviously denying it, but the next move from the United States, our key allies, will be absolutely key.
Absolutely right. And I think there's a lot of talk about where this could go, whether the situation could be escalated. But I think the chatter is heading in the right direction, which is about de-escalation. So if there are going to be targeted sanctions against Iran, that's already happened through expelling certain diplomats and other measures there. But you can do that without arm-to-arm combat at this stage. But I think the US will be weighing up all of its options. Antony Blinken obviously gave a press conference in the United States yesterday to say that, you know, there will be a response from the US, but it'll be at their time and it'll be in the way in which they think is the most appropriate. So all eyes are now on the United States as to when it makes that move.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, isn't it, how domestic politics plays so much into international politics. The States, they've got a presidential election this year. We've got a budget coming up. So all the noise, both sides. You've got Donald Trump saying, you know, go a bit more hawkish, I suppose you could say, than President Biden. And here we've got all the generals. We've got the Secretary of State for Defence coming out saying we need conscription, we need more cash. But a lot of that is, you know, part of the sort of national narratives rather than actually looking at what's happening in Iran, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it plays into, you know, the very uncertain times that we're living. And you're absolutely right. You know, there'll be supporters of Donald Trump who are clearly adversaries of Joe Biden to say we must act now. It's a demonstration of showing your strength. Opponents of Biden will say that the US looks weak if it doesn't take action now against Iran, who are clearly, as we know, funding these at arm's length organisations like Hezbollah in Tehran, like the Houthis who are carrying out the attacks in the Red Sea. So Iran is responsible.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
the only solution is jihad by the armies of the Muslim countries, not by you, me, or we. What training do I have? There are people with arms.
I'm about to blow the lid off the shady Muslim Vote organisation. Plus,
a humanitarian ceasefire that's immediate requires both sides to lay down their arms.
Is Keir Starmer about to lose total control of Labour? And
let me die.
trigger warnings for snowflakes watching Shakespeare, and has our future king made his first mistake? I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages tonight with my panellists, GB News star Nana Acquia, Tory Deputy Chairman James Daly and author Amy Nicole-Turner. Also, find out what happened when I took to the streets earlier. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Are extremists with links to terrorism behind the Muslim Vote organisation? I reveal all next.
Well, our top story this evening from the GB newsroom is that a body was recovered from the River Thames yesterday. Police detectives are saying they strongly believe it is that of chemical attack suspect Abdul Azidi. Earlier, police said they believed Azidi had gone into the river at Chelsea Bridge. That was based on CCTV evidence. The body was recovered by the Metropolitan Police's Marine Unit at around 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon after a report from the crew of a passing boat. Meanwhile, his former partner, who was attacked alongside her 2 young daughters, remains in hospital but is no longer under sedation. Prince William has said fighting in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas must end as soon as possible, and there's a desperate need for increased humanitarian support for Gaza. The Prince of Wales said he's deeply concerned about the terrible human cost of the conflict, with too many lives lost. And that follows Lord Cameron's warning to Israel that the fighting needs to stop, and Labour too has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in a major shift in the party's stance since the war, with the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy saying earlier on the world wants to stop the fighting. Here at home, Birmingham City Council says it needs a bailout worth £1.25 billion as it looks to recover from effective bankruptcy. Council leaders say a combination of austerity and underfunding has hit the city hard. They're looking at selling assets to cover some of their expenses, but residents are also facing cuts across essential services, including adult social care, highway maintenance and assisted transport. Dimming street lights is expected to save around £900,000 a year, while cutting refuse collections to every 2 weeks could also claw back £4 million a year. Meanwhile, 94% of councils are set to raise council tax by the maximum amount allowed by the government, according to new figures out today. That means an average Band D household could see an annual increase of just over £100 a month. 17 authorities still haven't confirmed their plans, and 4 previously bankrupt councils have special dispensation for a 10% tax hike. That comes as 37 councils in England still face £1.1 billion funding gaps over the next 2 years. And the Body Shop, the beauty retailer, is set to shut nearly half of its 198 UK shops today after falling into administration. It's understood that around 270 head office jobs will also be cut. in moves that administrators say they hope will re-energise the brand. The Body Shop employs around 2,200 people across the UK. For the very latest news stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
One of the men seemingly behind the muslimvote.co.uk is a former leader of a now banned terrorist organisation who wants there to be a global Islamic State and thinks integration is bad. Mohammed Jalal has publicly stated that he is involved in the Muslim Vote. It is a website that sprang up after the October 7th Hamas terror attack in Israel. Its stated aim is to put so-called Muslim issues at the forefront and to back as many independent candidates as possible at the next election. They have several high-profile MPs in their sights. Now, these include Shadow Foreign Sec David Lammy, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting and Shadow Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood. The government, or the movement I should say, began after the so-called Party of Islam was rejected by the Electoral Commission, although this may simply be a coincidence. GB News can reveal that Mohammed Jalal changed his name from Jalaluddin Patel and that he was the leader of the UK wing of the now banned terrorist organisation Hizb ut-Tahrir between the years of 2000 and 2007. He was the leader of the group when the 7/7 bombings took place in 2005 and when then Prime Minister Tony Blair said he wanted the group to be banned. He has called for a global Islamic State, saying in 2004, Muslims are acknowledging more and more that the governments of America and the West are enemies of Islam and do not wish to see them prosper. The call for the establishment of a global Islamic State holds currency in almost every city in the Muslim world. He added, plans are being made east and west for this Muslim world. Mr. Jalal has appeared in the past to want to topple our current society and replace it with an Islamic one. He told a Hizb ut-Tahrir conference in 2007, we from Hizb ut-Tahrir believe passionately that true liberation will come to the Muslim world when we dispense with these ruling elites and these Western-inspired systems. And in their place, we establish Islam through state and society. It may well be concerning for people to learn then that Mr. Jalal tweeted in December, I am pleased to announce a project we've been working on. A united group of organisations have come together and launched the Muslim Vote. The website states that it has significant financial and legal resources and provides a list of target seats displaying how the local MP voted in relation to the Gaza ceasefire and the percentage of Muslims living in that constituency. Mr. Jalal does not appear to want integration between Muslims and wider society and doesn't appear to think peaceful cooperation is possible until the British government outlines a contract with the Muslim community. He is quoted in The Guardian as saying, the whole discussion of integration is a front for coercive assimilation and no more than an assertion of Western values as being superior. The first step for community cohesion is for there to be an open debate about the nature of a contract between the government and the Muslim community. The government has not clearly spelled out what the terms of this relationship should be in order to facilitate acceptance and peaceful coexistence. Mr. Jalal describes himself as a political scientist and is reportedly developing a course for the Sapiens Institute, founded by an individual called Mohammed Hijab, who has been accused of anti-Semitism and stirring up hate, claims he no doubt denies. This is Mohammed Hijab.
However, when those Zionists came in with their dogs, that was an act of provocation. So what we're saying now, and I'm making it very clear so everyone understands, if those dogs come close to us again, we will see it as an act of aggression and we will kill those dogs.
Mr. Jalal has since tried to distance himself from his involvement with the Muslim Vote, saying he has only collected data for the organisation. GB News has approached Mr. Jalal and the muslimvote.co.uk on several occasions. We have asked for clarification as to what is meant by, quote, Muslim issues. We have asked who funds the group and who is affiliated with it. We have not yet received any response. We have also asked Mr. Jalal directly if he would like to clarify any of the points made in this report, and we have invited him on the show. That invite still stands. Now, it is obviously for each individual watching or listening to this broadcast now to make their own minds up as to whether they think this is all above board and fine in a democratic society, or whether or not
there is a concerted and shady attempt to infiltrate British politics and society from a group of seemingly hardline radicals with extreme views. Mohammed Jalal claimed to the Mail on Sunday that he only helped the Muslim vote with data collection and he denied being its founder. He also said he was no longer a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir and added, "I am neither affiliated with the Muslim Vote campaign nor an organiser. I certainly value their efforts to hold advocates of genocide to account and encourage Muslims to constructively engage politically." Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight now, and I'm joined by GB News presenter Nana Akua. I've got Conservative Deputy Chairman, the one and only James Daly MP, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Nana, I think there are some serious questions to answer as to whether or not our political system is about to be or is being infiltrated by extreme Islamists.
Well, I think you're spot on. I thought your monologue was very good. I think the problem with this is that many of the Muslims come from the regimes that they have in their countries. So a lot of the regimes in other Muslim countries are political, religious, totalitarian regimes, or, if you look at Saudi Arabia, is actually an Islamic theocracy. And that simply means that other lesser minority religions cannot be practiced openly. So Islam is the religion there. Now, I think that despite the fact that a lot of the Muslims come from places like this, where this is the regime, they know our system is a democracy. And, of course, they're weaponising our democracy against us. That's how I see it. It's a numbers game, which is why, of course, the suggestion that they should try and take 55 of the seats from the MPs who called for a ceasefire or abstained from voting for one. And I see that as a concern, because if you think of there's 650 MPs, 55 of those, that's about 8 or 9% around about there, that is almost capturing our political system. And there are others. So, for example, there are 31 marginal seats, and those seats could be defining seats.
I mean, it could have a massive bearing at the next election and also just going forward politically in this country. James, you know, I've got to ask you, you must be concerned about this as a politician.
Well, I suspect I'm one of those 55 MPs. I have a majority of 105. I have about 14,000 Muslim constituents.
Right.
I think that I'm unbelievably concerned by some of the things he's just said. He's just used the phrase on there, advocates of genocide. Let me put it this way. If he's equating that with any member of Parliament from any political party, he should be deeply, deeply ashamed of himself. Patrick, I think it's so important to say that tomorrow, whatever happens in that vote that's put forward by the SNP, not one person in Parliament, not one, is advocating for genocide. Every single person wants to see peace in the Middle East. And anybody who suggests and puts that motivation against any member of Parliament, it is scandalous. And the problem, Patrick, is when you say about the dangers of this type of language, the dangers are that this leads to threats and intimidation against MPs and the family. What we saw against Tobias Ellwood, was it last week? 350 people outside his house while the police just watched with his 2 sons in there. That's what this type of language leads to.
Amy, are you not concerned that we appear to have quite a shady group who, you know, have had at least some involvement with an individual who has called for a global Islamic State, who led for 7 years a now banned terrorist organisation and clearly doesn't believe in integration? Is that not a problem?
It sounds like a problem. It definitely sounds like a problem when you put it like that. But when you look at what the Muslim vote is, it's just a tool to see the way politicians are voting, right? And this guy shared it. That's all we really know at this stage, isn't it? It's not a political party. It doesn't really have any
the
power.
Party of Islam was rejected
the Muslim
by the electoral
vote.
college.
So really, it's just directing people. Like, Muslims do feel like their vote has been taken for granted. That's a valid concern that they have at the moment. So this is a way to just see how their primary concern, which at the moment is Gaza to a lot of people, but I wouldn't want to talk about them as they're a homogenous group anyway.
But what about...
But it's just venting that frustration about Gaza and looking at it.
Well, it says also, quotes unquote, Muslim issues, right?
Yeah.
And we have gone repeatedly to the muslimvote.co.uk to ask them what they mean by that, ask them who their funding is, ask them what they are planning on doing. They have said on their website that anyone who wants to stand, they will help them with resources. Those include legal resources, etc. And if one of the individuals who may have been involved in the setup of that was the leader of a now banned terrorist organisation, Nana,
would raise serious concerns over who else is involved in it.
Well, I mean, I'm concerned about it anyway. I don't like it feels like there's an undertone there. It is clear to me that this is almost, it feels like they're trying to capture the political system and I think that the ends are that ultimately, I know it sounds extreme and you may think that, but I do think that there is a feeling that this country could become a Muslim country if it carries on in this way. I mean, are you not worried about that at all? Do you not? Because
no.
You'd be happy if this country
Muslim issues are typically problems with the structural Islamophobia that seems to be within this country, which you can see all around you.
Is that what you're saying there?
So Muslim citizens in the UK have more likely chance of being unemployed, for example.
Can I just interject and just quickly say that the brother of that individual there has been running and helping out going to schools, saying that homosexuality is a sin and LGBT issues shouldn't be taught to children. I know that's something that you feel very strongly about.
What are you trying to insinuate? That
I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
How I feel about a individual espousing homophobic beliefs. That, well, obviously, I'd be completely against that. But
Because
I'm
that's
saying,
kind of what this stuff is, right?
but how?
Well, because this is almost like your ideology meeting another radical ideology.
I think
and they're not really compatible, are they?
But it's just coexisting together, is it not?
Well, it's not, is it?
Would you not respect the 4 million UK Muslims who are constantly accused of all sorts of things? And this whole conversation has like a slight overtone of just a misunderstanding of what it is to be Islam, is it not? Like we have a religious freedom in this country. They can be practicing Islam.
Well, I mean,
you can be a practicing Christian.
Directly to the extreme elements of it, which are on show, right?
I
don't think that's particularly compatible with a lot of Western liberal values, is it? Including your own, I dare say.
Well, no, possibly not. And I'm not. I don't know. I completely.
James, I'll just give final words to you on this. Apparently, you are on the MuslimVote.co.uk website.
It's good to know. At least I've got my nail pin light somewhere. There are a lot of extreme people in this world, Patrick. There are a lot of people say a lot of stupid things, and you know, I think the phrase that you've used and what the guy from the church earlier on said is make up your own mind. One of the good things about journalism, one of the good things about GBNews is you've set out the facts there. The people who are watching this programme, the people who reported now know what the situation is. I have complete confidence in the common sense of the vast majority of this country to reject views like that.
OK, all right, look, all of you, thank you very, very much. Well, very much a handbrake turn on this. It is, in fact, the last week to enter our Great British Giveaway, and your last week to grab a chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash. Here are all the details that you will need to get your entry in.
It's the final week to see how you could be the winner of £18,000 in tax-free cash. That's like having an extra £1,500 each month for the next year. Listen to the moment we told Phil from West Yorkshire he'd won our last Great British Giveaway.
Hello? Phil, I've got some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
You're joking. That's brilliant news.
But hurry, as lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
All right, coming up. Prince William calls for an end to the fighting in the Middle East as soon as possible. Now, has our future king overstepped the mark now, wading into foreign politics? We'll debate that in the press pack. But next, we break down today's big news that Labour will back an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. So is Keir Starmer now bending to the will of hard-left MPs? Dare I say it's some of the people I mentioned a little bit earlier on. Author, renowned podcaster Konstantin Kisin, he weighs into that very shortly. It's Patrick Christys tonight, and we are only on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law and was deporting people that had crossed illegally. Of course, President Trump enforced the law and improved the law to make sure that and worked with Mexico to have the Remain in Mexico policy. Biden has abandoned federal policy. In fact, he's deliberately trying to let in as many immigrants as possible. More for the Democrats, more is better and less is racist.
Just astonishing. And the statement that Greg Abbott put out is really feisty stuff. He said the federal government has broken the contract between the United States and the state of Texas. And the eye numbers, Greg, are simply eye-watering. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years, Governor Abbott says. That's more than the population of 33 states in the United States. Astonishing numbers.
And Martin, that's just Texas. If you add Arizona and other border states, you know, it's pushing 10 million. By the end of Biden's term, it'll be 11 million. A study by Yale University a few weeks ago, 3 very liberal professors that did the study estimate there's 22 million illegal aliens. So this is a crisis that was created by Biden. It's what he wants. They want unfettered access to the border. They're letting them in. It's a real hardship on the working people of Texas and other border states. And now it's a real hardship on cities that the federal government, as well as the governors of Texas and other states, are sending some of the migrants to those so-called sanctuary cities.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Here's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News. Now, look, tomorrow's newspaper front pages are coming in very, very soon. But first, this is huge. So the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza ahead of this vote on the matter in Parliament tomorrow. Speaking this afternoon, Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy outlined Labour's new position.
A humanitarian ceasefire that's immediate requires both sides to lay down their arms, and we're really clear about that. It requires those hostages to be returned, and we're absolutely clear about that.
No, you're not, because it's not quite as simple as that, OK? So reports tonight suggest that Keir Starmer will tell his party to abstain on the SNP's motion calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. So Scottish National Party in Westminster have backed Labour into a corner big time by putting forward a motion to say an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Now, a sizable number of Labour MPs are preparing to ignore Keir Starmer and just vote with the SNP. They may well include members of his front bench. I'm joined now by the author and podcaster Konstantin Kisin. Konstantin, thank you very much. Keir Starmer is in massive trouble here, isn't he?
Well, the funny thing about this is it shows that, decisive leadership is getting your MPs to abstain on a vote. And actually, people always talk about a U-turn as a bad thing. I generally don't always feel that way. I think it's good for politicians to change their mind. It's good for politicians to change the things that they advocate for based on the facts and the evidence and being presented with an evolving view of things. But of course, we know that with Keir Starmer, that isn't the case. He didn't know what a woman was for quite a long time, and then suddenly he discovered the truth about this difficult to adjudicate issue. And it wasn't because he was confronted with new facts and new information, but because spineless as he was pressured into it by people criticizing him over it. And likewise, in this instance, he knows what the right thing to do is, and we should give him some credit, Patrick. When he became leader of the Labour Party, he attempted to purge the party of the anti-Semitic Corbynista left. He got rid of a few people that needed getting rid of. What he's got now is he's between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, he knows what the right thing to do here is, which is, of course, if you want a ceasefire and if you want to call for one, that's something I actually support. You have to call on Hamas to hand over the hostages and hand over the terrorists who took them, and to lay down the weapons and to commit to not being terrorists anymore. Or he has to pander to the people who simply stop the world that want to get off in his own party, who want to call for a ceasefire, not because they think it's going to achieve anything, but because what they're doing, as you well know, because you were discussing it before I came on the program, is they're pandering to the part of their vote who simply want to make an issue out of this. And frankly, you got to take a step back here, Patrick, and look at the fact that we're all spending an inordinate amount of time talking about a conflict very, very far away, and it seems to be at the top of the list of priorities for a party that's supposed to represent the British people, not a very small minority of people who seem to care about this issue as much as they do.
Yeah, it's clearly top of the list for actually quite a large percentage, a worryingly large percentage, if you ask me, of our population who care more about Gaza maybe than what's going on in their local area. So just to clarify, and this has been a moving picture in the last couple of hours, so Keir Starmer appears to have been outflanked from both sides on this now. So the government has tabled an amendment to this ceasefire vote tomorrow in which they are calling for negotiations for an immediate humanitarian pause, followed by a permanent sustainable ceasefire. It's all just this kind of word salad, right? So obviously Starmer can't tell his MPs to vote for that. Simultaneously, he can't tell his MPs to vote for the SNP one, which is a complete, total, utter, immediate ceasefire. So now he is saying to his MPs, please just abstain. But his MPs are getting absolutely hounded out of town everywhere they go at the moment. There's posters going up saying you're complicit with genocide, blood on your hands, etc., etc. I mean, he can't continue like this. I mean, he literally cannot just tell them to say nothing. Surely they're going to vote. They're going to vote one way or the other.
And what it shows, Patrick, is something that many of us have been saying for a long time, which is if you play with that thing, you are going to go blind. And the thing that they have been playing with is identity politics, encouraging people to vote with their religion or with their ethnicity or with their racial group, instead of saying to them, look, we're all British and we're going to vote for the parties that best represent our interests in terms of the economy, in terms of local services, in terms of the National Health Service, in terms of the policy we want on tax and the armed services. Instead, they've been saying to people, you are this ethnic group, or you are this ethnic religion, or this religious group, or whatever, and you need to vote for us because we are the people who stand up for people with your skin color or with your belief system. And now they are finding out that when you play with that thing, you end up in a very bad position where people say to you, well, you promised us that you are the advocate for our particular niche worldview. You better deliver. And that's why they're getting hounded. And that's why Keir Starmer is in a position where, of course, he simply cannot tell the truth because the truth is unpalatable to both sides of his party.
It will be fascinating to see. This time tomorrow, we will know, probably, actually, how many Labour MPs decided to go against Sir Keir Starmer and decided to vote instead of abstain, and what that will mean for him. Keep an eye on his front bench. I mean, this could be massive. But look, Constance, just to move things on slightly, Starmer has perhaps performed his fastest U-turn yet, all right? So this time it was over his Chief of Staff, Sue Gray's plans to create a citizens' assembly, or a series of them, to scrutinise new laws. She announced the scheme in an interview yesterday, but less than 12 hours later, Labour officials insisted it was not an official policy. What you're seeing on your screens there is the two headlines, OK? Sue Gray announces citizen juries that will bypass Whitehall. And then, there we go, next to it, Labour backtracks. Just a few hours apart there. Constantine, is Sue Gray fast becoming a liability for Labour? Do you think a lack of consistency? What do you make of it all?
You know, I actually am a big fan of the idea of citizen assembly, so I'm not particularly critical of them attempting to pursue it. But it does seem like every time they suggest a policy, they go back on it very quickly. And again, we've got to be clear here, Patrick. It's not as if they were confronted with new information about the benefits or otherwise of citizens' assembly. This is about people politicking over this and being scared to go with the thing that they actually know they need to do, or with a policy that someone suggested. So it just shows you two things. The first of them is we have politicians who are utterly spineless. This is true, of course, on the other side of the House of Commons too. And the other thing, of course, is that despite all of this, I'm afraid when the next election comes, the Labour Party is still almost certainly going to defeat the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is even more useless. So it's not a great place and time in British politics at the moment.
No, indeed. Now, look, finally, Culture Secretary Lucy Fraser has taken aim at theatres that add trigger warnings to Shakespeare's plays. They're warning that audiences should not be treated like children. Now, her intervention came just weeks after the legendary British actor Ralph Fiennes called on theatres to stop using the warnings. He had this to say.
I think the impact of theatre should be that you're shocked and you should be disturbed. I don't think you should be prepared for these things. And when I was young, we never had trigger warnings for shows.
So would you get rid of them then?
I would, yes, I would.
Trigger warnings on Shakespeare, Constantine. Are we a bit too soft these days? What do you make of it?
Shock, horror, man speaks sense on television. Well, I mean, you know what? We talk about this issue so much, I don't even know what else to add, really. We all know this is complete nonsense. We all know that adults are failing young people and children by training them to think in this way. We all know, by the way, Patrick, as you well do, that the evidence on this is very clear. When you give people trigger warnings, they're much more likely to be hurt by the things that they actually then see and listen to. So, of course, we shouldn't be doing this. It's a complete waste of time. Ralph Fiennes, I'm glad he's adding his voice to this conversation. We've got to make children and young people resilient, not fragile.
Just to add one more question onto this now, do you think there's going to be some pushback? Do you expect that there's going to be some resistance, some rebellion to this at some point, that there will be a generation that comes up very soon that goes, look, screw all of this nonsense, you know, I'm just going to do my own thing? I mean, are we due that? I'd love to see it.
Well, with Gen Z, I think we are starting to see that. There is a gender split. The young women are very, very woke, and the young men are almost worryingly not woke, to the point where you sort of think, whoa, we're going a bit far here, which was always the worry. You know, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The pushing of this nonsense has been so strong and so powerful for such a long time. It's inevitable that people will be pushing back against it. And I just hope that we can harness those energies into things that are healthy and productive, teaching young people to be strong, confident, and resilient, as opposed to simply going out there to offend, to troll people, which we don't want, because that isn't the recipe for a healthy society either. Yes, we should have the right to offend. Whether we should actually be doing that for the sake of it is a whole different question.
Constantine, thank you very much. And can I congratulate you as well on reaching a bit of a milestone, I think, in your other life as a podcaster and trigonometry and all of that as well. How many subscribers have you managed to get now?
Well, trigonometry is fast approaching 1 million, but actually the milestone I had this week is my Substack has now reached 40,000 subscribers, and 2.5 of them give me money, which I really appreciate because it allows me to do what I do. Thank you very much for that, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well done. Keep up the good work. Take care. That's Constantine Kissing there. All the best. Now, coming up, as a government defence minister declares that he's guilty as charged for woke policies in the armed forces, is it necessary for our army to be diverse? But next, yes, I will bring you all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They're landing as we speak. I'll run you through all of the big stories as well. Stay tuned. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Are you across this microaggression story?
I'm across microaggressions. I'm also across XL bullies.
You would not last 5 minutes.
Oh, for God's
So
sake,
basi-
civil servants, give me strength.
So civil servants have been taught not to roll their eyes. Something you do very well. We both do it quite a lot, actually.
Because it's seen as an act of microaggression. This, by the way, this costs the taxpayer, this training, £160,000. What the hell is going on in our woke civil service? Who cares if someone rolls their eyes in exasperation?
What the hell is going on in our civil service, full stop, if the way that civil servants are communicating with each other is rolling their eyes and looking at their phones? I mean, is the government being run by people who are essentially acting to each other like stroppy teenagers?
But I'm all right with people, because, you see, I would be in defence of eye rolling.
So me too, I couldn't care less.
But do you know why? Because I want people to give me their genuine reaction, as long as it's not deeply offensive. But I want to know how people feel. And what they're being told here, civil servants are being taught, and of course this is an area of employment law, because people are taking cases against their bosses who roll their eyes at them. They're saying they're being encouraged to say nothing and nod their heads to promote transparency and inclusion. Don't show what you really think, just nod your head.
But I think that comes with then saying what you really think, and this is the key problem, and what these courses are trying to establish. And I looked into some of them when I was researching this, and it's not saying hide what you're feeling. It's saying, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling your eyes, if you've got a disagreement with someone, say I've got a disagreement with someone. Because otherwise, you can't have an effective workplace if people are sort of just passively, aggressively huffing at each other.
Why do these civil servants need to be taught this? Why do people need to be taught this? This is just normal discourse in a normal working day. You don't need a seminar on it.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News. Now, it's a shame. No, it's not. It's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight in the most entertaining paper review anywhere. I'll tell you, it might be a shame we haven't seen what's on the papers yet. All right, let's do it. Let's go with the Metro. Cam's government knew post office scandal. So ministers told in 2016 how investigation that could have helped thousands was ditched. OK, all right. Let's go to the Independent. William wades in. Look, just a trigger warning of your own here now. This is leading the majority of the newspapers tomorrow. It is Prince William wading in. Too many have been killed in Gaza. The Prince says that the conflict must end as soon as possible. It's also on the Daily Mail. He's well-intentioned, but I fear that he's heading for dangerous and uncharted waters. This is in relation to Prince William's intervention. William, too many have died in Gaza conflict. We go to the Daily Telegraph again. William, fighting in Gaza must be brought to an end. Well, I'm joined again by my wonderful panel this evening. We do, of course, have GB News star Nana Acquia. We also have Conservative Deputy Party Chairman James Daly MP and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Nana, is Prince William wrong to wade in?
Oh, William, why? Look, I love Prince William. He recently won the most popular man in the world. I mean, I think that was before he opened his mouth on this. Look, at least he mentioned the hostages, because a lot of people start talking about many being killed and only seem to refer to the conflict that is happening and the deaths in Gaza. But I just feel that he should learn a lesson. His dad kept wading in on things and people got sick of his dad doing it. And I just think, William, I'm talking to you now. William, why? I respect you. I love you. I think you're amazing. But the conflict in Gaza is really, really complex. And it's a bit like Keir Starmer saying something in the end. You end up isolating certain people. And I just think, William, just butt out.
Well, critics, including our very own Nigel Farage, have suggested that our future king should stay out of this fraught political discussion. James, your view on that?
What Nigel says?
Well, yeah. Well, let me put it this way, Patrick. I think Prince William is a great man. I think he is a national treasure. I think he's somebody we should all treasure. I think we all rush all the time to criticise. What he said is hardly revolutionary stuff. He said that too many people have died in the conflict, and too many people have died in the conflict. He's not saying anything that's out of kilter. I think with all the policies of the main political parties in this country, you know, I think there's a constitutional, if I get boring, constitutional issue about keeping out of politics. But he's a good man. He's trying his best. He's standing in for the king through very difficult times. So I think we should all be getting behind him as a country, not criticising him for putting forward a view based upon empathy and compassion.
I mean, if we just have a look at what he's actually said, he says too many people have been killed. I think everyone could agree with that, right? He says that even in the darkest hour, we must not succumb to the counsel of despair. I continue to cling to the hope that a brighter future can be found. I refuse to give up on that. I mean, basically, he said quite a lot of nice things without saying a lot, but he's also shown, I suppose, general compassion on a major international issue. I suppose it's all right, Amy, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's pretty in step with both the government and the public. I feel so much so that this is a bit of a wielding of soft power, and it could have even been penned by the Foreign Secretary.
Do you think?
Well, it's pretty perfect, pretty spot on. Very Diana, I thought, less so the Queen, who had to speak through her hats.
Yeah,
so
right,
it is bold for him to come out.
Well, you disagree,
No, because it's really nuanced, the situation. I mean, you heard when Keir Starmer alluded to Israel being able to defend itself, and if you know, and it sounded like people interpreted what he was saying, that he was agreeing to cut off all the power, and it wasn't, but it was misinterpreted and pulled out. And I think that's the problem. It's not what he said, it's the fact that he's saying it, so he needs to just back out of it.
He just spent a load of time with the Red Cross, and I think the images that he saw when he was on that...
Jez, could I ask you as a
So that's his informed opinion, isn't it?
Do you think there's any chance that this intervention from Prince William, I mean, does this have any bearing on where the government is when it comes to this at all?
I don't think it does. I think that Prince William has put forward... I mean, Patrick, you've just said the point of view. He said things which are not controversial. I don't think they are controversial. Perhaps they are. Nigel Farage seems to find them controversial. I think it reflects well on the man who's going to be the king of this country. I think it reflects well on the confidence we all have of him in terms of the duties that he's doing. And listen, I am always tempted. I'm the most... I'll have a go at anybody or say anything because that's probably the nature of who I am. But not this guy. He's trying his best in very difficult circumstances.
Can I just ask you, there is a vote tomorrow, obviously, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot too much here at all, but I mean, how are you going to vote tomorrow? Do you know?
Do you know? I'm going to be absolutely honest with you that we, the party, have yet to give a party view in respect of what now two amendments and one main motion. So I will listen to the arguments tomorrow, make the vote, but. As will all MPs, Patrick, I have to say this again, all MPs will make that decision on the basis of good and honourable intentions, and every single MP in the House of Commons, bar none, agrees with Prince William.
All right, I think the government has put forward something about a humanitarian pause. Is what they're after, so presumably...
Well, I think humanitarian pause is...
But why don't Hamas... Listen, it could all be over if they just release the hostages. Why don't they do that?
I completely agree with that.
It's all very well you're saying humanitarian pause, isn't it? I think you're missing one of the issues, the main issue, and Israel has said... Release the hostages. This will stop. We will stop. So it's not just Israel. It is Hamas firing over.
I agree wholeheartedly with the hostages point.
I mean, reading between the lines, and the whips haven't contacted you yet. I suppose by the sounds of things. So there we go. I'll have to wait and see. But look, a bit of a shift into it. I've got lots of quite heavy topics tonight. So scientists have made a breakthrough discovery that could prove controversial. Men and women's brains do work differently. Researchers at Stanford University found that women tend to be better at reading comprehension and writing ability on average and have good long-term memory, OK? Whereas men reportedly have stronger visual and spatial awareness and better working memory. Do not shoot the messenger, OK? These findings could disprove academics who previously thought that society rather than biology were more crucial in determining our behaviour. Are you buying this, though? Well, I ventured onto the streets of Britain to get your views, and this is what I found.
Well, I think sometimes women tend to think, to overthink things, and men are more on point.
I think women take more notice of what goes on around them and what men say. Men put their feet in first, and women possibly are more careful.
It's said that women are more empathetic and emotionally intelligent. Men are apparently, don't shoot the messenger here, apparently better at things like physics and the sciences.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah?
There's got to be a place
I
for
don't
everybody.
think so. I think
I'm very good at typing.
I think that's...
Yes, well, there we go. They certainly weren't buying it. I mean, do you notice any differences between the male and the female brain, Amy?
Well, yes, but these are averages, aren't they? Averages.
Yes.
And it is societal.
Well, what are you best at than your partner? Go on.
What am I the best at?
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, we've kind of swapped roles because we say he's the mum because he's super organised, he's much tidier, and I'm just like the typical sort of lazy dad.
Joe, dare I ask?
I have absolutely no idea, and I have no idea what you've just said either. But listen, at the end of the day, as you know, I am a passionate believer in equality, and therefore, in that ilk, we're all the same, and we're all, you know, one of the things about this country. Let me put about this, right? One of the things about this country, which is never ever discussed.
Go on.
What matters is whatever size your brain is, whether it's small, big, or whatever. It's about talent. It's about what you think and what you are. So having a discussion about what men and women are different or whatever else it is about. It's about how good you are as a person.
Nana, you think there are differences?
Yeah, no, there's major differences, and this is why I talk about the whole trans issue, because that's why I don't agree with the notion that a trans woman is a woman, because I believe that there is a real difference in how women process and deal with things, and this proves it. I mean, this AI, I think it was 95% of the time, worked out the difference between a male and female brain because of the frontal bit, what's it called, the limbic system, which is supposed to be different in women.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, you are clearly there displaying the woman's forensic attention to detail.
Although I will say that
my male ability to read a headline and decide that makes a good story and then go from there. So, thank you. All right, look, we are a bit pressed for time. So coming up, should overseas care workers be entitled to bring their families with them when arriving to Britain? That's been in the news, and I'll be crowning tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, a government defence minister has declared that he's guilty as charged for woke policies engulfing the British Armed Forces. Should it be focused less on diversity and more on defence? More of this when I return in just a second.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen to the highest since the Attlee government way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
More front pages for you now, just been delivered. Let's do it. It's the Daily Express. PM, completely ridiculous for illegal migrants to jump the queue. So, in his strongest attack on illegal migration yet, Rishi Sunak has hit out at the completely ridiculous breach of the UK's borders by small boats. The Prime Minister said it's unfair illegal migrants are jumping the queue. OK, all right, cheers. And we go to The Sun. Brit nuke sub-launch fails. Classic Sun headline, this. Exclusive. Navy shock. A Trident missile dramatically misfired and crashed into the ocean, yards from the British nuclear submarine that launched it. Oh, grief, OK. Yes, that's a concern. Slight concern, actually, that, maybe. Yeah, but world nearly ended. So let's go to The Guardian now, where everything, as I'm sure you can imagine, is completely fine. Labour leader faces threat of revolt over Gaza despite call for ceasefire. It's been fascinating to see the way The Guardian have really gone after Starmer recently, you know. But Labour leader faces threat of revolt. NHS adopts Martha's rule in 100 hospitals as well. Let's just whiz ourselves over to The Times. Prince issues Gaza plea for a permanent peace. That is on the front of, I think I'm right in saying, 4 or 5 different newspapers. We've spoken about that a heck of a lot. So those are all of your front pages. I'm joined now again by my press pack. We've got GBNews presenter Nana Akua. We've got Conservative Deputy Party Chairman James Daly MP and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, the Defence Minister Andrew Morrison has challenged by independent MP Andrew Bridgen, OK? Now, apparently he was saying that he was responsible for diversity in the armed forces, etc. I'm just wondering how you feel about all of this, James. He's saying that he takes you know, full responsibility for...
You know what, Patrick? I'm going to say this. Sometimes, much as I love GB News, when we're talking about woke stuff, I just want to tell the viewers this. I don't even know what they're called. In this place, when you go to the toilet, it's unisex toilets. Can you believe this? This is GB News. This is the height of anti-wokeness, and they're doing that, and they're complaining about other people. All this nonsense, that story is complete and utter balderdash. Okay. You know, the ministers and this government are committed to ensuring that we have the best talent from whichever background in the army, and there ain't nothing wrong with that,
But that's
Patrick.
not quite true, is it?
Absolutely, it's true.
Yeah, because there's been massive recruitment and retention problems,
Well, what about the Royal Air Force when they were literally asking for non-white people? I mean, that's not about talent, that's about the colour of your skin.
Whoever it is, from whatever their background, the ministers are determined to get the best people, and we have got a problem with recruitment. We have got a problem. Yeah. And therefore we want to open it up to as many people as possible to take advantage of a brilliant career, to encourage people.
What about the people with tattoos then? How come they can't be in it?
I'm not a tattooist. I have no problem with tattoos. Some of the most talented people I've met have got tattoos.
Well, that's the Armed Forces Day. If you have a tattoo, certain place they don't want there.
Patrick, we can't ban people from being in the army who've got a tattoo, can we? You'd agree with that?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that
also, whenever I watch these things about, like, commandos or whatever, they've all got tattoos. So I don't really know what this rule is about.
It's the armed forces who don't want people with certain tattoos.
I mean, they did say they had enough of useless white men, so now apparently they want more women. Amy, would you feel more comfortable having more women in our armed forces?
Or tattooed.
Absolutely. Also, wasn't that RAF thing put to bed, and it was an error of judgment, and it was
they paid compensation for
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that doesn't represent this issue. I think what James said does represent this issue. That really they just want to get recruitment in the army because we have massive shortages, which leads to conversations about things like conscription. To avoid that, let's just bulk out our army and make it open to everyone.
We all agree with that, but I'm saying that they have policies that do exactly the opposite, like literally asking for no white people or saying no tattoos or.
But they don't literally say no white people.
Are you seriously saying that the army is saying we're not going to have any white people whatsoever in the army?
No,
it's not correct, is it?
No. You're actually deliberately misinterpreting that because we've already...
That's what you just said.
We've already spoken about it, and I said specifically that they did call for... They were looking for...
It was the pilots thing. Do you remember the RAF pilots thing?
That's what we're talking
about. But that was settled now, and that's not...
I think it's a great thing to be able to encourage as many people from as many different backgrounds to be part of our own forces.
So why don't
Andrew Morrison, a great man who's trying to do that. And
all right.
Get him on, Patrick. He'll be able to tell you.
I would love to get him on. I would love to get him on. I can show him the unisex toilet as well. No, it's time to reveal. It's time to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. Right, we're going to have to rattle through these. Nana, who's your greatest Briton, please?
Well, it's got to be Kemi Badenoch, obviously for sacking the chief, Henry Staunton, who was the post office chief, and then really socking it to him when he tried to claim... Anyway, that's my one.
OK, she was a Union jackass last time you were on, I think.
Yeah, I know, but, I can switch.
Yeah, all right.
We can change our minds.
Andy Murray, a great British institution, been around for a number of years, won many Grand Slams, lost a few matches recently, has won his first match coming up. When the next Grand Slam comes, when it really counts, people are going to know that Andy will do the business, much like another institution in this country.
All right, good. OK, go on, Amy. Who's your greatest Briton?
Samantha Morton for her amazing speech at the BAFTAs. I say, if you haven't watched it, then look it up, because she dedicated much of her speech to care leavers like herself and said representation matters, and I think that's important.
All right, today's greatest Briton is Kemi Badenoch. There we go. Well done, Kemi. Good stuff. Union Jackass, go on.
It's got to be Prince William, because I think he's stepping out of turn there. I think the situation is more nuanced. William, I love you. I'm just giving you some gentle, caring advice. Get out of it. Don't get involved in that. Stay out.
OK, go on, James. Who's Union Jackass?
This is probably very unfair, because I've never met Councillor John Cotton in my life, but he's the leader of Birmingham Council. He is the poster child for incompetent Labour councils who use the excuse all the time we haven't got enough money, but are the personification of wasting money and incompetence. And there you have the Gold Award winner, putting taxes up on hard-working people in Birmingham because of their own failures.
Go on, quickly, Amy, very quickly.
Well, I've gone for James Cleverly for banning overseas care workers from bringing their families, because I think that's just ridiculous, and they should, of course, be able to bring their families when they're doing a difficult job here.
OK. One of the things I enjoy most about this section is how occasionally a completely obscure political non-entity pops up. I think we had, like, Workington,
That's enough about me,
Club
Patrick.
once. Anyway, there it is. Today's Union Jackass is the lesser-known Councillor John Cotton. Well done, Councillor John Cotton. OK, can I just say a massive thank you to everybody tonight? I have really enjoyed it. I know it's been quite a heavy show in parts, but I would urge everybody to go back and watch a variety of different things, especially the expose of the Muslim vote, Julian Assange's lawyer, and the Happy Mondays, definitely not Coke dealer. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. I'm Alex Berkell, and here's your latest GB News weather forecast. It is going to be widely very wet for most of us tomorrow morning. However, before then, we still have some rain around this evening and overnight, particularly across parts of the south, as a front has made its way southwards as we've gone through today, and is going to linger across southern parts through the night, bringing cloudy, wet weather here. Clearer skies further north, at least to start the night, before some cloudy, wet and windy conditions feed up from the southwest. Like I said, some clear skies to start the night in the north, and so we could see a touch of frost for a time before the unsettled weather pushes its way in, lifting our temperatures. So most places will start tomorrow mild but wet. Watch out for some heavy rain, could cause some spray on the roads, and we're likely to see a bit of flooding and some travel disruption, especially in parts of the southwest. However, the rain will clear away towards the east as we go through the day, with something drier and brighter following in behind. Just a few showers to watch out for here and there. It is going to be windy though, and so that wind will take the edge off the temperatures, which are above average for the time of year. More unsettled weather to come through the end of the week, likely to see another band of rain sweeping its way through on Thursday, and that could be quite heavy, some downpours possible, with showers likely elsewhere, and more showers to come as we go through Friday. It's likely to be a bit blustery at times too, but there should be some sunshine in between. Into Saturday, and it looks a little bit drier, but temperatures dropping closer to average for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
I appreciate the story isn't in today's papers, but it has been running all week, and it's this row over the use of nitrogen hypoxia to kill this man who was on death row in Alabama. And it's been linked back to you, and I wanted to ask you about it because this is intriguing, because you did a television show back in 2015 where you, I believe, tested this method of execution. Just tell me briefly about it, Michael. What happened?
I didn't test this method of execution, and it was a bit longer ago than that. But what I did do was test hypoxia. So I tested various ways in which people are killed in the United States, and asked the question as to whether there was a more humane way of doing it. So I was put into hypoxic situations, for example, into a chamber run by the Netherlands Air Force, which simulated what happens if you're in an aircraft at 30,000 feet and suddenly the windows blow out. And what happened to me was that I was almost instantly rendered incapable. As an experiment, I was trying to play with children's toys, putting triangle shapes into triangle spaces, and I was quickly unable to do that. I was asked, what is 9 minus 5? And I said 5. And then the officer who was with me, the Air Force officer who was wearing an oxygen mask, said to me, Michael, put your mask on or you will die. And I was incapable of putting my own mask on. Now, this suggested that hypoxia was very fast acting, and that you had... Obviously, I was in no pain or anything like that. I was just completely unaware. By the way, this is why, if you're on an aircraft and it depressurizes, you must put your own mask on first. But of course, I can't go on and draw conclusions.
No.
We did not experiment with nitrogen. But what I can say is it was evident to me that hypoxia renders you incapable almost instantaneously.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.